What is a Born Alive Certificated Person Part 2 by Charlene Music Musicians for Freedom updated September 2018. But they shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid. Micah chapter 4 verse 4 mentioned almost 50 times by George Washington. This phrase refers to the independence of the peasant farmer who is freed from military oppression. Read more. George Washington knew it, even grew it. Don't you want a car that runs on cannabis? Aviva and the Flying Penguins, CD Baby. Mercury, god of commerce, hands bag of gold to financiers. The same constellations we can see in the night sky to this day are the very same heavenly actors who play in all the world's star myths. Here's how to explore the action, Stellarium. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Gen. 3-5. Washington rises from his tomb on a heavenly ray of light with the help of figures representing genius and immortality, while faith, hope, and charity look on. Also, The Lost Symbol by Dan Brown. So Ahab went home, because Naboth the Jezreelite had said, I will not give you the inheritance of my ancestors. Jezebel his wife said, I'll get you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, placed his seal on them, and sent them to the elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's city with him. In those letters she wrote, Proclaim a day of fasting and seat Naboth in a prominent place among the people. But seat 2 scoundrels opposite him and have them bring charges that he has cursed both God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death. Raiders of the Lost Ark 1981. Apparently, instead of shrinking with horror from the atrocious crime, Ahab eagerly hastened to his newly acquired property. Read more. I say rights, for such they have, undoubtedly, antecedent to all earthly government. Rights, that cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws. John Adams in Brumidi's painting, Mercury, god of commerce, with his winged cap and sandals and caduceus, hands a bag of gold to Robert Morris, financier of the Revolutionary War, while men move a box on a dolly. The anchor and sailors led into the next scene. Brumidi signed and dated the canopy on the box below Mercury. Read more. We have top men working on it right now. Raiders of the Lost Ark 1981. If all poodles are dogs, does it follow that all dogs are poodles? Bill Murray and Steve Martin, What the Hell Is That? Video. What is a leasehold estate? Watch this video. There are 6 future interests, watch this video. What is the rule against perpetuities? Watch this video. Vertical and lateral support, video. Disposition by a licensed hospital of the remains of a dead fetus may be made without issuance of a final disposition permit, but authorization of the parents must be obtained. Department of Public Health and Environmental Information and Statistics Division Vital Statistics 5 CCR 1006-1. An average citizen who wants to read the law, does so at his own risk in Georgia. An average citizen might face a costly lawsuit for copy and pasting a page of the law into a blog. Read more. D.C. Code Section 7-214. Final disposition of dead body or fetus. Copyright status of work by U.S. subnational governments. The Great Seal of the State of Tennessee proclaims boldly, agriculture and commerce. You find it on the cover of this Funeral Director's Handbook for Vital Records Registration, PDF. 19 U.S.C. 58C, Fees for Certain Customs Services July 7, 2018. Unsworn declarations under penalty of perjury, 28 U.S. Code Sect. 1746. As of the start of 1746, the Gregorian calendar was 11 days ahead of the Julian calendar. Read more, 1746. 31 U.S.C. ch. 31, Public Debt. The terms budget authority, new budget authority, outlays, and deficit have the meanings given to such terms in Section 3 of the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act of 1974, 2 U.S.C. 622. January 20 of each fourth year after 1965, Inauguration Day, is a legal public holiday for the purpose of statutes relating to pay and leave of employees as defined by Section 2105 of this title, and individuals employed by the government of the District of Columbia employed in the District of Columbia, Montgomery and Prince George counties in Maryland, Arlington and Fairfax counties in Virginia, and the cities of Alexandria and Falls Church in Virginia. Read more. Holidays. Maui's father is aware that he omitted certain sacred chants during the ceremony of baptism that he performed on his child, which he realizes will make Maui vulnerable to death. Regarding Maui's birth as the youngest of 5 brothers, the storyteller of the Arawa recounts that Maui was not carried to full term by his mother, and his older brothers called him an abortion who was cast into the bushes but did not die. Instead, he became a powerful trickster. David Warner Mathisen entrusted baby to God. Perhaps Jochebed was hoping that Moses would be found by a merciful Egyptian, and thus spared from death. Stationing Miriam close by would then allow her to see where Moses would end up, and hopefully allow her to initiate contact with her son at some later time. Read more. The Pharaoh in the opening of the book of Exodus was afraid of the Jews because there were so many of them. He feared they would join a foreign army against the Egyptians or start a rebellion. He ordered all male Hebrew babies to be killed. Read more. Is the born alive certificated person female? The Supreme Court of Illinois, having refused to grant to a woman a license to practice law in the courts of that state, on the ground that females are not eligible under the laws of that state, held that such a decision violates no provision of the federal Constitution. Bradwell v. The State, 83 U.S. 16, Wall. 130,130, 1872. Is the born alive certificated person a younger male? If his younger son had been provided for by entering a monastery, the young man was treated as if dead, his assets, if any, administered like those of any other decedent. Then and Now in the Law of Property by John V. Orth, PDF. Estate Planning and the Realities of Perpetuities. The name of the sex, and it is even used of animals. Strong's H. 802. The legal support for the federal enclave doctrine comes from the United States Constitution. Congress has the power to exercise exclusive legislation over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dock yards, and other needful buildings. U.S. Const. Art. 1, Section 8, cl. 17. But federal enclaves do not arise just because the federal government has bought some land from a state. Creation of a federal enclave requires an actual transfer of sovereignty from the state government to the United States. The funeral service practitioner or person acting as a funeral service practitioner shall obtain the personal data from the next of kin or the best qualified person or source available and shall obtain the medical certification from the person responsible. Read more. When a death occurs in a moving vehicle, as defined in 4.5.2.101, in the United States and the body is first removed from the vehicle in this state, the death must be registered in this state and the place where the body is first removed is considered the place of death. When a death occurs in a moving vehicle while in international airspace or in a foreign country or its airspace and the body is first removed from the vehicle in this state, the death must be registered in this state, but the actual place of death, insofar as it can be determined, must be entered on the death certificate. Read more. A permit for disposition issued under the law of another state that accompanies a dead body or dead fetus brought into this state is authorization for final disposition of the dead body or dead fetus in this state. Read more. Dockside Apartments, Cape Fear, 1991. A federal enclave is established when a state cedes jurisdiction over land within its borders to the federal government and Congress accepts that cession. Needful Things, 1993. Yeah, his mother died while he was serving. The farm got sold off. He got the proceeds. Cape Fear, 1991. You talkin' to me? Just ask Robert De Niro. The Achilles heel is you. 15 moments that made The Sopranos the greatest show of all time. The Remains of the Day, 1993. Carmela is surprised to find that the family priest, Father Phil, has dropped by for some of her baked ziti and to watch Remains of the Day on Tony's new DVD player. Day means calendar day. Dead body means a human body or such parts of such human body from the condition of which it may be reasonably concluded that death recently occurred. District of Columbia Official Code Copyright 2016 All rights reserved. Its market concepts have been used to describe both the criminal justice sentencing system and human organ transplant programs. This article considers some of the ethical and legal issues relating to the ownership and use, including for commercial purposes, of biological material and products derived from humans. Property in the Human Body and Its Parts, Reflections on Self-Determination in Liberal Society by Alexandra George. Can a database be protected by copyright? Ben Bernanke and the Wisdom of Parasites, an act, process, or instance of beginning, inception. The process of becoming pregnant involving fertilization or implantation or both. Conception. Apparently, our biological property is pledged and somehow forms enclaves the states have ceded to the federal government. Kind of like how the emerald cockroach wasp finds and commandeers a dying cockroach as its host in which to hatch its eggs? Watch videos, read Ben Bernanke and the Wisdom of Parasites. Roll that dung ball. What about Kepri? The least of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becometh a tree, so that the birds of the air lodge in the branches thereof. Also, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Read these Bible verses. The Park is Gone poster. I just saw it at the theater, it was amazing. Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom 2018. Is it possible to bring back dinosaurs from extinction due to the discovery of prehistoric mosquitoes that become trapped in amber after having fed on dinosaurs? The top of John Hammond's cane had a polished piece of amber with a mosquito in it. His former partner, Benjamin Lockwood, has a cane just like it, although the type of insect inside looked to be slightly different. Easter eggs. Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom 2018 poster. The Park is Gone. A federal enclave is territory, transferred by a state through cession or consent to the United States, over which the federal government has acquired exclusive jurisdiction. In order for a territory to be considered a federal enclave, the federal government must have purchased the territory by the consent of the legislature of the state. Ready to close the deal with the devil? Sale of real property, video. What is animal husbandry? Check out Strong's H802 Ishsha. Was it a robbery thus to assume to himself what belonged to all in common? If such a consent as that was necessary, man had starved, notwithstanding the plenty God had given him. John Locke goes on to explain that, we see in commons, which remain so by compact, that it is the taking any part of what is common, and removing it out of the state nature leaves it in, which begins the property. Without which the common is of no use. Of Property and Government, John Locke. 42 U.S. Code Section 274E, Prohibition of Organ Purchases. Who Owns You? By David Kopsel is a comprehensive exploration of the numerous philosophical and legal problems of gene patenting. What is a mark record and why is it important? The Same Old Story, seen from Fringe TV series 2008 to 2013. Before performing any farm labor contracting activity, a farm labor contractor must register with the U.S. Department of Labor (DOL) and obtain a certificate of registration. Probate is the process of appointing someone to stand in the shoes of someone who died, the decedent, for the purpose of transferring the decedent's property to those entitled to receive it. Years ago I worked for the Defense Department. We were tasked to cultivate soldiers, quite literally, grow them. It was highly theoretical. If perfected, a baby was born and within 3 years, aged to the equivalent of a 21-year-old male, a soldier in prime condition. Walter Bishop, Fringe TV series 2008 to 2013. The Same Old Story, video. See there. A son is born and we pronounce him fit to fight. There are black heads on his shoulders and he pees himself in the night. Thick as a brick, Jethro Tull, lyrics. Who, exactly, is the mother of exiles to whom is brought the wretched refuse of your teeming shore? Emma Lazarus, The New Colossus. Read High Treason, The Plot Against the People by Albert E. Kahn 1950, PDF. The Genealogical Matrix from Property to Personhood? The Equation of Status and Property? Check out Mapping Alimony, From Status to Contract and Beyond by Dr. Gayatri D. Kacharu, PDF. Scene from RoboCop 2014, featuring transhuman theme, brain, heart, lungs, human face. District of Columbia constituted a body corporate for municipal purposes, February 21, 1871. The Act of Congress of February 21, 1871, 16 Stat. 419, creates a municipal corporation called the District of Columbia. It provides for the appointment of an executive officer called a governor, and for a legislative assembly. It creates a Board of Public Works, which is invested with the entire control of the streets of the district, their regulation and repair. Barnes v. District of Columbia 1875. A Detroit police detective, Alex Murphy, is chosen after he is critically injured in a car bomb explosion arranged by crime boss Antoine Vallon in revenge for Murphy's investigation into his activities. Norton persuades Murphy's wife Clara to sign off on the procedure. Upon waking up and realizing the extent of his transformation, Murphy flies into a rage and escapes from the lab, but Norton shuts him down and brings him back to the lab. Read more, RoboCop 2014. Theodore Roosevelt 1915 hyphenated American. The Dillon Rule was echoed by the United States Supreme Court. Municipal corporations owe their origin to, and derive their powers and rights wholly from, the legislature. It breathes into them the breath of life, without which it cannot exist. State constitutions in the federal system. Hunter v. Pittsburgh, 207 U.S. 161, 1907. A legislature breathes life into a muni corp. But who, exactly, breathes life into a legislature? Check out the law of wind. States may add to fundamental rights but can never diminish or infringe upon fundamental rights by legislative processes. Any such attempt, if challenged, may involve a strict scrutiny review in court. Read more. No, I would not give you false hope on this strange and mournful day, but the mother and child reunion is only a motion away. Paul Simon. Paul Simon is one of the most successful and respected songwriters of the rock era. Rising to fame in the mid-60s, Simon's songs were mature and literate, but also melodically engaging, and spoke to the concerns and uncertainties of a generation. Read more. Arrested Bride. Is this woman caught in the act of adultery? Predestination 2014. What came first, the chicken or the egg? The rooster. Ethan Hawke's character is after a killer known as the Fizzle Bomber who levels a few blocks of New York City in 1975, killing thousands. But to do so, he has to pull a few strings in time to steer things in his favor. Read more of this film review. Predestination 2014. America was not conquered by William the Norman, nor its lands surrendered to him, or any of his successors. Possessions are undoubtedly of the allodial nature. A summary view of the rights of British America by Thomas Jefferson. Allodium simply means occupation of lands without challenge. What is allodial title? The man granted a life estate pure autre vie to his deceased son's wife, his daughter-in-law, for the life of his grandchild. What is an estate pure autre vie? Also. Some states have passed statutes under which the felonious and intentional killing of one joint tenant by another joint tenant operates as a severance. Real property, PDF. Under English common law, there were two main ways an escheat could happen: a person's property escheated if he was convicted of a felony but not treason, when the property was forfeited to the crown. If the person was executed for the crime, his heirs were attainted, i.e. ineligible to inherit. In most common law jurisdictions, this type of escheat has been abolished outright, for example in the United States under Article 3 Section 3 of the United States Constitution, which states that attainders for treason do not give rise to posthumous forfeiture, or corruption of blood. If a person had no heir to receive their property under a will or under the laws of intestacy, then any property he owned at death would escheat. This rule has been replaced in most common law jurisdictions by bona vacantia or a similar concept. Historically, treason also covered the murder of specific social superiors, such as the murder of a husband by his wife or that of a master by his servant. What is treason? After 25 years of a good marriage, what will Darcy do once she discovers her husband's sinister secret? A Good Marriage 2014. A writer is accused of plagiarism by a strange man, who then starts haunting him for justice. Stephen King and Johnny Depp combo, Secret Window 2004. What person would be such a yellow dog as to reduce himself to signing away his constitutional rights just to have a job? What's a yellow dog contract? The exclusion of agricultural and domestic workers from the early program was due to considerations of administrative feasibility involving tax collection procedures. Why were agricultural and domestic workers excluded from Social Security in 1935? The Lone Gunman, a trinity of characters. The partners follow breadcrumbs left behind by Langley that take them from Arlington National Cemetery to a secret NSA facility called Titan Point, where they find a mainframe that contains great minds working as digital slaves, including their old buddy Langley. It's like I designed heaven. Read more. The Lone Gunman, The X-Files Season 11, Fox Mulder and Dana Scully find Richard Langley. Langley's headstone is backward and has the wrong birthdate. His birthdate is wrong. Fox says, video. The minister was sometimes buried with his head at the eastern end of his grave so he'd be facing his flock at the time of resurrection. Check out Fundamentals of the Esoteric Philosophy. Celestial Waters of Space. 101 Ways to Say died. The rural cemetery movement, which began in the 1830s, diminished the role of church-administrated cemeteries and made cemeteries a fashionable place for recreation. These park-like cemeteries placed a high emphasis on landscape and design and might arrange their headstones to fit the contour of the terrain, following up and down hills or taking advantage of attractive vistas, rather than adhering to a strict east-west orientation. The elemental world. Let me tell ya about the birds and the bees. The Birds and the Bees, Jewel Atkins. Don't have to humble yourself to me, I ain't your judge or your king. We may not even have our dignity, this could be just a powerful thing baby we can choose, you know we ain't no amoeba. Thing called love, Bonnie Raitt. Harold and Maude 1971, a little graveside recreation for the welfare of his ideal commonwealth. Plato suggested a law which should provide, that the wives of our guardians are to be common, and their children are to be common, and no parent is to know his own child, nor any child his parent. The proper officers will take the offspring of the good parents to the pen or fold, and there they will deposit them with certain nurses who dwell in a separate quarter, but the offspring of the inferior, or of the better when they chance to be deformed, will be put away in some mysterious, unknown place, as they should be. In order to submerge the individual, and develop ideal citizens, Sparta assembled the males at 7 into barracks and entrusted their subsequent education and training to official guardians. Although such measures have been deliberately approved by men of great genius, their ideas touching the relation between individual and state were wholly different from those upon which our institutions rest, and it hardly will be affirmed that any legislature could impose such restrictions upon the people of a state without doing violence to both letter and spirit of the Constitution. Meyer v. Nebraska 1923. In accord with the SSA's construction of the Social Security Act, the court determined that the twins would qualify for benefits only if, as 42 U.S.C. Section 416 H2 specifies, they could inherit from the deceased wage earner under state intestacy law. Astru v. Capato, 566 U.S. 541 2012. Rights, derived from the great legislator of the universe. John Adams. Since there was a taking of private property for public use, the claim was founded upon the Constitution, within the meaning of Section 141 of the Judicial Code, and the Court of Claims had jurisdiction to hear and determine it. Held, a servitude has been imposed upon the land for which respondents are entitled to compensation under the Fifth Amendment. United States v. Cosby, 328 U.S. 256 1946. For background, be sure to read AI and Pandora's Box, The Revenge of Zeus by the most amazing and prolific Nashville-based author and historian, William Henry. Harry Chapin, Cats in the Cradle, He who would be no slave must consent to have no slave. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. Abraham Lincoln. Check out Owning Persons, The Application of Property Theory to Embryos and Fetuses by Jessica Weiland Berg. From Cradle to Tomb, Estate Planning Considerations of the New Procreation by Catherine Venturatos Lorio. What is a concurrent estate? Watch this video. What about the hand you were dealt? Death equals dealt, L plus H? Matters dealt by admiralty law include marine commerce, marine navigation, salvage, maritime pollution, seafarers' rights, and the carriage by sea of both passengers and goods. Admiralty law also covers land-based commercial activities that are maritime in character, such as marine insurance. Read more. Yet our distress comes from no failure of substance. Compared with the perils which our forefathers conquered because they believed and were not afraid, we have still much to be thankful for. Nature still offers her bounty and human efforts have multiplied it. Plenty is at our doorstep, but a generous use of it languishes in the very sight of the supply. Primarily this is because the rulers of the exchange of mankind's goods have failed. Practices of the unscrupulous money changers stand indicted in the court of public opinion, rejected by the hearts and minds of men. First Inaugural Address, FDR. Are we not rulers of our own goods? God gave Peter a vision of animals that the Jews regarded as unclean because of the ceremonial law of the Old Testament. The voice from heaven said, "Rise and eat." But Peter protested that they were unclean. And the voice spake unto him again the second time, What God hath cleansed, that call not thou common. Acts chapter 10 verse 11. While the ships bearing their dreams sail out of sight. Jackson Browne is a born-alive certificated person, a morally degenerate sewer-dwelling subhuman? A subdude? Dude looks like a lady. An unclean animal? The common man, of unsound mind or below the minimum legal age to write a will. Intestate distribution is the default distribution of a decedent's estate determined by state law when there is no will or will substitute, or when there is property that is not covered by a will. You can twist perceptions, reality won't budge. Show don't tell, rush. I love you in a place where there's no space or time. Leon Russell. Pretender, 1590s, one who intends. 1620s is one who puts forth a claim. Agent noun from pretend v. Specifically of a claimant to the English throne from 1690s. If the governing instrument is silent, then the receipts and expenditures are to be allocated in accordance with state law. Federal income tax concepts needed to prepare Fiduciary Form 1041 and the final Form 1040 of the decedent. IRS Pub. 559. Apocalypse Now? And I beheld, and lo a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. Rev. 6-5. Private property, unless forfeited by crimes or by offenses of the owner, can be seized only by way of military necessity, for the support or other benefit of the Army or of the United States. If the owner has not fled, the commanding officer will cause receipts to be given, which may serve the spoliated owner to obtain indemnity. The Lieber Code, General Orders 100. Could someone please speak English? Under the common law rule, each power of appointments conferred on A's first-born child is invalid. The lastest possible time of exercise is at the death of A's first-born child, who cannot be the validating life because the child was not, in being, at the creation of the power. A non-general or a general testamentary power cannot validly be conferred on an unborn person, unless a perpetuity-saving clause or some other special provision limits the power's exercisability to a life in being plus 21 years. The Uniform Statutory Rule Against Perpetuities, Lawrence W. Wagoner. American Horror Story, Monsters Among Us. What is a perpetuity-saving clause? Pre plus tender equals pretender. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. Matthew chapter 6 verse 24. Should we act pretend on our own behalf? 5 equals 1/2. Follow cunningly devised fables of the so-called government? See 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 16. Yes, I'm the great pretender, just laughin' and gay like a clown. I seem to be what I'm not, you see, I'm wearing my heart like a crown. The great pretender, the platters. What is tender? Caught between the longing for love and the struggle for the legal tender, out into the cool of the evening strolls the pretender. He knows that all his hopes and dreams begin and end there. The Pretender, Jackson Browne. Liberty presumes an autonomy of self that includes freedom of thought, belief, expression, and certain intimate conduct. The instant case involves liberty of the person both in its spatial and more transcendent dimensions. Lawrence v. Texas 2003. Transcendent dimensions? Seriously? Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. ELP. Yup. It's a freak show. U.S. Department of Homeland Security Heart Database. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security (DHS) is quietly building what will likely become the largest database of biometric and biographic data on citizens and foreigners in the United States. The agency's new Homeland Advanced Recognition Technology (HART) database will include multiple forms of biometrics. Electronic Frontier Foundation (F). Also, Planet Biometrics News. To think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. The Tell-Tale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. It's a dirty story about a dirty man, and his clinging wife doesn't understand. Hey, it's a steady job, and I want to be a paperback writer. A little pulp fiction, perhaps? To read while you are on the throne? Groom of the stool? Ha! The copyright owner will normally be the writer or the writer's estate, but sometimes the publisher of the work will own the adaptation rights to it. A matter of fact, non-fiction and copyright. The law is always in the public domain, whether it consists of government statutes, ordinances, regulations, or judicial decisions. When a model code is enacted into law, it becomes a fact, the law of a particular local government. Indeed, the particular wording of a law is itself a fact, and that wording cannot be expressed in any other way. Welcome to the public domain. Speaking of listen to the melody for My Love Is in There Hiding. I love you in a place where there's no space or time. A Song for You by Leon Russell, video. During a wedding rehearsal, Beatrix and Tommy Plimpton, along with a group of family friends, decide on the details of the wedding. Beatrix, fully pregnant, takes a break and finds Bill on the balcony of the chapel. The two share some tendered moments. Read more. Y'all got a song? How about Love Me Tender? I can play that. Rufus, he's the man. Mrs. Harmony, we're all the family this little angel's ever gonna need. Kill Bill 2, video, script. The American Bar on posthumously conceived heirs. It follows 2014. I used to listen to a lot of music in the 70s and 80s, so I know many songs by heart. Heh, that's a joke, son. Searching but not finding, we're lost in a masquerade. Leon Russell, This Masquerade, Carney. A young woman is followed by an unknown supernatural force after a sexual encounter. It follows 2014, video. When at last my dreams come true, darling, this I know, happiness will follow you. Everywhere you go. Love Me Tender, Elvis P. Check out his last will and testament. An authorization for final disposition sets forth an individual's wishes regarding how his or her physical remains should be disposed of after death, whether he or she wishes to donate organs, desired funeral arrangements and the like. Estate planning terminology. I have loved you in my dreams, posthumous reproduction and the need for change in the Uniform Parentage Act. A mixture often of incongruous elements. What is melange? Sense of deplorable, is from 1710. What is melancholy? The souls of men, which are divine, notwithstanding the opinion of Epicurus, are elevated by songs. Even the pilot amidst the storm raises his voice in song to give courage and alacrity to the sailors. It is the trumpet that banishes from the field of battle the fear of death. Asclepiades, the physician, with the aid of harmonious music, brought back reason to troubled minds. If, then, music presides over the movements both of the body and the soul, it cannot be foreign to our birth. Read more, The Natal Day. Also, check out Epictetus, The Anatomy of Melancholy by Democritus Jr. Caretaker Jack Torrance, sounds like Torrance, with Delbert Grady melanin, dark brown or black pigment found in animal bodies, 1832, modern Latin, with chemical suffix in -, first element from Greek melos, genitive melanos, black, probably from a pi root * mel, black, of darkish color. Source also of Sanskrit melina, dirty, stained, black. Lithuanian melinas, blue, Latin mullius, reddish. Is a born alive certificated person reddish, dark-skinned? Melina sounds like Melina, Arnold's dark-skinned sleazy squeeze in Total Recall, 1990. Jack Torrance, Mr. Grady, you were the caretaker. Delbert Grady, I'm sorry to differ with you, sir, but you are the caretaker. You've always been the caretaker. I should know, sir. I've always been. Read more. Also, script, The Shining, 1980. The historical origins of the Jack Torrance title are a matter of considerable controversy. Torrance himself acknowledged adapting his proposals from earlier systems of transfer and registration, particularly the system of registration of merchant ships in the United Kingdom. The Torrance system works on three principles. Mirror principle, the register mirrors accurately and completely the current facts about title to each registered lot. This means that each dealing affecting a lot, such as a transfer of title, a mortgage or discharge of same, a lease, an easement or a covenant, must be entered on the register and so be viewable by cheap online search. Curtain principle, one does not need to go behind the certificate of title as it contains all the information about the title. This means that ownership need not be proved by long complicated documents that are kept by the owner, as in the private conveyancing system. All of the necessary information regarding ownership is on the certificate of title. Indemnity principle provides for compensation of loss caused by private fraud or by errors made by the registrar of titles. Time flies when you're having fun. We had a little money once, they were pushing through a 4-lane highway, government gave us $3,000, you should have seen it fly away. Raised on robbery, Joni Mitchell. Well, I lay my head on the railroad tracks waitin' for the double E, by Warren Zevon. What's a double E? Outside I'm masquerading, inside my hope is fading, just a clown, oh yeah, since you put me down, my smile is my makeup I wear since my breakup with you. The tracks of my tears, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. Issue has a wider meaning than just children. It is a technical legal term. Leaving a gift to issue in a will can therefore produce different outcomes as to who inherits compared to leaving it to just children. A person making a gift to their issue is showing they want to continue to keep it in the family, among blood relations, and away from those related by marriage, by affinity. You might want to watch this film, which I really enjoyed, The Gift 2015, a psychological horror thriller film written, co-produced, and directed by Joel Edgerton in his directorial debut, and co-produced by Jason Blum and Rebecca Yeldham. Fall not in love therefore. It will stick to your face. Deteriorata, fall not in love, it will stick to your face. National Lampoon. To the extent that the government permanently occupies physical property, it effectively destroys the owner's rights to possess, use, and dispose of the property. Loretto v. Teleprompter Manhattan CATV Corp., 458 U.S. 419 1982, Getting Gold, A Practical Treatise for Prospectors, Minors, and Students 1898, pdf. Genesiology, the study of reproduction and heredity. Toxic trace metals in human and mammalian hair and nails. Jesus equals water of life? Watch this video. Fall not in love. It will stick to your face. Live is used as a verb and as an adjective. Alive is used as an adjective only. 1 is the loneliest number, 2 can be as bad as 1, it's the loneliest number since the number 1. 3 Dog Night, video. These rights derive from the inherent dignity of the human person. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. What is dignity? Dignity and debility, planetary dignity. It 2017 movie script excerpt Springfield, the District of Columbia is that portion of the territory of the United States ceded by the state of Maryland for the permanent seat of government of the United States, including the River Potomac in its course through the district, and the islands therein. Territorial area, sect. 1-101. What is domicile? How maritime law works, video. Inside the secret shipping industry, video. A foreign flag under which a merchant vessel is registered for purposes of reducing operating costs or avoiding government regulations. What's a flag of convenience? Seed, concede, secede, decedent, retrocede, they shall mingle themselves with the seed or seed of men, read Daniel chapter 2 verse 43. Enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. Or is it, thy seed and her seed? Stocks and storks. Stocks, are kept in the name of its partnership nominee, Seed & Co. Ernie Hancock interviews Suzanne Trimbath, Ph.D., Chief Executive Officer, STP Advisory Services, LLC, about the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation, DTCC. Great Freedom-filled online magazines, and Freedom's Phoenix. The jurisdiction of a state is co-extensive with its territory. United States v. Bevins, 16 U.S. 3 Wheat. 336 1818, read more. Washington, D.C. is not one of the 50 states. But it's an important part of the U.S. U.S. Embassy in Austria. Yeah, like a drain, sewer, gutter, sink is an important part of any system of roads and right-of-way. Rome, Maryland, was the original name of a community within Prince George's County, Maryland, which would eventually become Washington, District of Columbia. Washington, D.C. exposed. Also. Fresh and pure air cases. Check out this artwork depicting the altar to Mars, divine father of Romulus and Remus, and Venus, their divine ancestress, depicting elements of their legend. Tiburonus, the father of the Tiber, and the infant twins being suckled by a she-wolf in the Lupercal are below. How maritime insurance built ancient Rome. Oh, and while the king was looking down, the jester stole his thorny crown, the courtroom was adjourned. No verdict was returned. American Pie, Don McLean, the Colorado Court of Appeals applied Section 4 February 102, CRS, to hold that a separate adoption petition isn't necessary for each of 4 children of the same deceased mother, even though the statute refers to preserving the anonymity of the adopted child. Another court found that a municipality that created conflicting messages between a traffic control signal and temporary stop signs waived its sovereign immunity, even though the statute referred to the waiver of immunity for failure to repair a traffic signal. A singular word includes the plural. Singular v. plural. Drain, a trench or ditch to convey water from wet land, a channel through which water may flow off. The word has no technical legal meaning. A number of states have drainage statutes in order to protect the welfare of the public. Null Island, the busiest place that doesn't exist, video. The purpose of a special drainage district is to create a tax-raising body to provide works in areas where there is no sanitary authority. The French government initiated and hosted the first of 14 international sanitary conferences in 1851 to standardize international quarantine regulations against the spread of cholera, plague, and yellow fever. A Brief History of the World Health Organization, WHO. The Thing 2011 DOB. 27,500 years ago, who can it be now? Do you recall these classics? Rabid 1977, Lifeforce 1985. I Liked Ghosts of Mars 2001. In the Mouth of Madness 1994 is one of John Carpenter's best films, in my humble opinion. Borrows heavily from H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King. Read more. The Thing 2011 is an excellent prequel to John Carpenter's 1982 adaptation of John W. Campbell Jr.'s novella, Who Goes There, Don't You Think? When the action starts, there's a storm coming. There's always a storm coming. Check out The Mist 2007, starring very cool Thomas Jane. Over the 55-year period between 1998 and 2052, Americans will engage in a wealth transfer of at least $41 trillion through both testate and intestate succession. If the problems discussed in this article were involved in even 1/100% of this transfer, more than $4 billion would be at issue. Dad was born 1,000 years ago? An examination of post-mortem conception and inheritance with a focus on the rule against perpetuities. Sperm is property. The Greek word for property is periousia, which literally translates to substantive things ousia that are around you or within reach peri. It appears that the concept of owning something derived from the physical act of possessing it, protecting it, claiming it with your actual dominance over it. Privity of contract, a third party may claim under an insurance policy made for their benefit, even though that party did not pay the premiums. Isn't that a little like dead peasant insurance? The employer is listed as the beneficiary and collects a death benefit if the employee dies. My child. But not my heir. Technology, the Law, Post-Mortem Conception by Robert J. Karekis. A property interest in tissues, cells, gametes? Is post-mortem sperm procurement legal? In Back to the Future 1985, Marty McFly meets his mom and dad in the past. Read more. Not so funny when it's your mom, is it? Norwegians exchange a joke about sex before they fall into a deep hole, abyss in the Antarctic ice. Kate listens to the band, Men at Work, sing Who Can It Be Now? Video while she investigates a 27,500 Y.O. biological specimen. Later in the film, she says, "It may be with you in the vehicle. It's like a virus." And what do we do with a virus? Quarantine. The Thing 2011 Quarantine, a period of time, theoretically 40 days, during which a vessel, coming from a place where a contagious or infectious disease is prevalent, is detained by authority in the harbor of her port of destination, or at a station near it, without being permitted to land or to discharge her crew or passengers. The Thing 2011, not so funny when it's your mom. Widow's quarantine, a rule set out in the 1215 Magna Carta and followed by the common law to give a widow a chance to go through the grieving process of her deceased husband and to avoid eager descendants of the deceased who want her out of the home. But wait. Where there's no will, there's a way. Also, what is persterpes? Thy princes are rebellious, and companions of thieves, every one loveth gifts, and followeth after rewards, they judge not the fatherless, neither doth the cause of the widow come unto them. Isa 1:23. Movables include all things, tangible or intangible, that are not immovable. A state has absolute authority over personal or movable property within its borders. According to an ancient legal fiction, movables follow the person. Movable property was supposed to stay with the person of the owner. Therefore, such property did not have any situs other than the domicile of the owner. As a matter of public policy, a state is empowered to decide whether to apply its own rules to property, within the state, of foreigners who choose to place it there for custody or investment, and to honor or not the formal agreements or suggestions of such owners by which the state's law would apply. Mortgages and deeds of trust, video, recording system, video. What is an equitable servitude? I enjoyed this film starring Tilda Swinton, which I watched only recently. Kevin has trouble with his potty training. He soils his diapers. Recall soil plus P equals spoil. Ultimately, he commits a horrific assault on an auditorium full of his peers at his public school. We Need to Talk About Kevin 2011. You'll find a similar assault by a student on the public school in the OA. Check out Season 2. Two documentary filmmakers attempt to penetrate a cult who worships a woman who claims to be from the future. I first learned of Brit Marling in Sound of My Voice 2011. Switched at the fertility clinic? One legal procedure that some attorneys practicing assisted reproduction law are attempting to use to formalize the intent of the parties to a surrogacy agreement is to obtain a prebirth parentage order in which the intended parents are declared the legal parents before the child is born. There are numerous benefits to such prebirth orders. First and foremost, the intended parents are determined to be the legal parents of the child before the child's birth, thereby giving them immediate and sole access to and control over the child and its postnatal care and medical treatment when it is born. The use of prebirth parentage orders in surrogacy proceedings. Regarding Joyce Rosemary Bruce v. Robert Preston Boardwine, the plain meaning of the term medical technology does not encompass a kitchen implement such as a turkey baster. Judge Stephen R. McCullough wrote for the appeals court. So, the turkey baster lost. Time Crimes 2007 by Nacho Vigalondo. They that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Rev. 17-8. Do biblical sons of God from the past take wives of daughters of men that will live in the future? Check out Living in the Past, Jethro Tull. A man accidentally gets into a time machine and travels back in time nearly an hour. Finding himself will be the first of a series of disasters of unforeseeable consequences. Time Crimes 2007. Is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil a time machine? Did you know, the time traveler's name is never revealed in the novel by H.G. Wells? He published The Time Machine in 1895, with the English writer subsequently credited with having popularized the concept of purposely traveling through time using a machine, rather than mysteriously appearing in the past or future by random or divine intervention. Almost 2 decades following his death in 1946, his book was then turned into a movie which won an Oscar for its then advanced time-lapse photographic effects. Read more. When a vehicle owner passes away, a beneficiary or personal representative must apply for a new title certificate with the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles. If the decedent died with a will, a copy of the will must accompany the application. A vehicle usually is a depreciating asset, so a personal representative may wish to distribute the automobile from the estate as soon as reasonably possible to avoid waste. Read more. How do I title and register a vehicle that I inherited? Certified letters of testamentary verifying the executor, executrix, or letter of testamentary verifying the person that has been appointed. Read more. Where is the land down under? Can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover. Land down under men at work, video. There's a storm coming. Sarah Connor, Terminator 1984, video. At a certain point, Skynet uploaded itself into a T-5000 Terminator and infiltrated John Connor's TechCom unit under the guise of Alex, leaving its core in Colorado as a decoy. Skynet is Genesis. You always call a B-boat, she. Georgie's brother, Bill, it 2017. The fideicomissum was one of the most popular legal institutions in ancient Roman law for several centuries. It is the conjunction of the Latin words fides trust and committer to commit, and thus denotes that something is committed to one's trust. State of Virginia retrocession 1846 District of Columbia, a territory situated on the Potomac River, and being the seat of government of the United States. It was originally 10 miles square, and was composed of portions of Maryland and Virginia ceded by those states to the United States, but in 1846 the tract coming from Virginia was retroceded. Legally it is neither a state nor a territory, but is made subject, by the Constitution, to the exclusive jurisdiction of Congress. Black's Law Dict. D. The district is created a government by the name of the District of Columbia, by which name it is constituted a body corporate for municipal purposes, and may contract and be contracted with, sue and be sued, plead and be impleaded, have a seal, and exercise all other powers of a municipal corporation not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the United States and the provisions of this code. Territorial area, sect. 1-102. Also, check this link. Faithless love like a river flows, like raindrops fallen on a broken rose, down in some valley where nobody goes, where the night grows in like a cold dark wind. Faithless love like a river flows. Faithless Love, J.D. Souther. From Heart Like a Wheel, Linda Ronstadt, video. Isn't the truth stronger than fiction? Video. Kurt Kallenbach, All the Jacks Are in Their Boxes. Since the Constitution did not grant jurisdiction over intrastate commerce, the bankers' goal was to slowly take over the federal government through the Foreign Commerce Clause in conjunction with the grant from the Constitution that the federal government has total control over its own possessions. Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. Under foreign commerce the federal government is sovereign, and within its possessions the federal government is sovereign as well. The federal government may impose any tax or regulation it likes under these jurisdictions. L. L. Stuller's blog. There's Power in the Blood. Justice in the Sword. The History of Business Depressions by Otto C. Leitner. Now all these things happened unto them for ensamples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. 1 Cor. 10:11 I lost my leg in a plane crash, and I lost my father. Finders Keepers 2015. Watch the trailer, video. The manure originally belonged to the owners of the horses that dropped it. But when the owners abandoned it on the road, it became the property of the man who was first to claim it. Haslam v. Lockwood was decided in Connecticut, 1871. Check out Selected Cases on the Law of Property and Land, published in 1912. Pennywise bites off Georgie's hand and arm. Do you have first-hand knowledge? After all the jacks are in their boxes, and the clowns have all gone to bed, you can hear happiness staggering on down the street, footprints dressed in red. The Jimi Hendrix Experience. Jack fell down, broke his crown. Jill came tumbling after. It 2017 opening credits. The action takes place on Jackson Street, watch for the street sign in the beginning. Rod Serling's experiences as a soldier left him with strong opinions about the use of military force. He was an outspoken anti-war activist. The episode takes place on Global Airlines Flight 33, en route from London to New York City. Their only hope of returning to the present day is to repeat the previous maneuver. With dwindling fuel supply, the plane increases altitude in an attempt to catch the same freak jet stream and to return to 1961. The Odyssey of Flight 33, The Twilight Zone. Legal issues concerning assisted reproduction. The Supreme Court on the Social Security rights of posthumously conceived children. State law controls family status. Posthumous conception, Social Security Act, state intestacy law, statutory interpretation. Also. Riff Raff, Let's Do the Time Warp Again. Single quote. Yet the law does not privilege donative intent in all circumstances. Courts may alter a gift by refusing to enforce the provisions of a will, modifying or terminating a trust, or interpreting the terms of a will or trust. Is such intervention warranted? If so, under what circumstances should the courts intervene? The jurisdictional competition for trust funds is patently real and intense. Does a non-owner's right to be included trump an owner's right to exclude? The fact that Kiddo is pregnant with Bill's child and the fact that the child is alive has only been briefly mentioned up until now. But as Bill and Kiddo literally go toe-to-toe, their past and present relationship energizes this narrative from beginning to end. With the help of flashbacks, we find out about Kiddo's 4-year hiatus in the hospital, and the romance she and Bill once had. Read more. How about The Fertile Octogenarian and Unborn Widow, Illustrations of the Rule Against Perpetuities. Speaking of fish, read about the Vesica piscis, The Tale of a Fish. A Wrinkle in Time 2018 Common law treated the illegitimate child as being the child of no one. Nowadays, an illegitimate child is legally considered the child of the natural mother. Who qualifies as issue of a decedent? As applied to notes or bonds of a series, date of issue means the day fixed as the start of the period for which they run, with no reference to a specific date when the bonds or notes are to be sold and delivered. With regard to bonds only, bonds are issued to the purchaser when they are delivered. What if a straight line is not the shortest distance between 2 points? What if there is a fifth dimension which can make you reach places instantly? Read about Disney's new film, A Wrinkle in Time 2018. When the assignee of heritable rights conveys his rights back to the cedent, it is called a retrocession. Until 1846, Washington, District of Columbia, was shaped like a diamond. President George Washington, America's greatest hero from Virginia and favorite general of the Revolution, determined D.C.'s shape in 1791. He included his hometown, Alexandria. In 1846, all D.C. land southwest of the Potomac River was returned to Virginia, perhaps foreshadowing the great storm that was to fragment the nation. Presented before the Arlington Historical Society, May 9, 2002 by Mark David Richards. Avatar 2009 Shipping carton contains Jake's brother Tommy. A fideicommissum is a legal institution, where the owner of a property transfers this property to another person, subject to it being transferred from that person to yet another person at a later stage. From a registration point of view, there are 3 types of fideikommissa, viz., full fideikommissa with power of alienation, and fideikommissa residui. Read more, Ghost Digest. Constructive fraud, a contract or act, which, not originating in evil design and contrivance to perpetuate a positive fraud or injury upon other persons, yet, by its necessary tendency to deceive or mislead them, or to violate a public or private confidence, or to impair or injure public interest, is deemed equally reprehensible with positive fraud, and therefore is prohibited by law. Bouvier's Law Dictionary 1856 edition, The Rape of We, the People, and the Constitution for the United States. Costello, I'm asking you who's on first. Abbott, that's the man's name. Costello, that's whose name? Abbott, yes. Costello, well go ahead and tell me. Abbott, that's it. Costello, that's who? Who's on first? Also, Abbott and Costello discuss the retired actors' baseball team, video. 7/28, video. The afterbirth, is it left behind and presumed abandoned? What child is this who, laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping? I don't know? Do you know? Why lies he in such mean estate, where ox and ass are feeding? Good Christians, fear, for sinners. The silent word is pleading. Read more. The tiny island sags downstream, cause the life that lived is dead. The wind cries Mary, Jimi Hendrix experience. Donald J. Trump advocates total repeal of the federal estate tax, the death tax, which would include the generation-skipping transfer tax. Without a tax avoidance incentive, the desire to create perpetual trusts could collapse. Congress promotes perpetual trusts, why? 2016, It's. Also, Perpetuity Reform 1983 by Lawrence W. Wagoner. Also, you may find this of interest. The Supreme Court held, in Barron v. Baltimore 1833, that the Constitution's Bill of Rights applied only to the federal government. Gitlow partly reversed that precedent and established that while the Bill of Rights was designed to limit the power of the federal government, the incorporation principle allows it to be applied to states. Of course, Georgie's brother, Bill, is in bed under a disability. What a great opening scene, right? Watch the video. Speaking of disability. 3 girls are kidnapped by a man with a diagnosed 23 distinct personalities. They must try to escape before the apparent emergence of a frightful new 24th. Split 2016. Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson, Unbreakable 2000 Through a Glass Darkly 1961 references biblical scripture. When paper is scored, it folds. When glass is scored, it breaks. Recall the opening scene in the film Unbreakable 2000. When we see Elijah being born, we're looking in a mirror. Admire as a root for admiralty and maritime sounds like maritime. In the film, Mr. Glass orchestrates several deadly events to find Dunn, the unbreakable man he knew must exist, and then makes him into the hero he requires. From M. Night Shyamalan, starring Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson, watch the opening scene. But first, we're gonna seal off this pool. Deep Blue Sea 1999, satirist Jonathan Swift (1667–1745) is credited with penning, "A wise person should have money in their head, but not in their heart." Read more, The Origin of Penny Wise and Pound Foolish. Also, "Least he, as it is wont to be said, be penny wise and pound foolish, least he I say, gather ashes, and cast away flour. This is a day of national consecration." FDR. "All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives."